Hello.
Joanne, I just noticed you did not put, you only put your YouTube channel up there. You didn't put your Facebook channel. Is it too late?
I can try.
All right. I will say hi to people while you try and make that happen. I don't suppose it's the end of the world. Welcome, everybody, to another happy, sprightly Saturday morning. Joanne's back from her run, and she's not paying any attention to me, so I can say
No, because I'm trying desperately. Make all the run jokes you want.
Well, actually, while she's doing that, not paying attention, I will tell you that she has started these late night, for those who can't sleep videos that are going, oh, now she's paying attention. That are going crazy. Everybody loves them. And I confess, I don't watch them at that hour of the night, because at that point I'm trying desperately to go to sleep, which means I have to keep writing. But I watch them during the day, and they're good. So if you haven't checked into her YouTube channel, it's just you. It's really cool. That's definitely worth doing. And now look, you managed to make it work. Hello, yeah. Joanne. How are you?
Hello. I am good. How are you?
I'm good. Somebody's just back from Charlottesville, Virginia. And I would love to know how it went and what you were doing.
I was doing an event in Charlottesville at the Albemarle County Historical Society about Jefferson and Hamilton. And I learned two things, actually. So a lot of the conversation, because this was Charlottesville, started out being
about how terrible Thomas Jefferson is?
Well, he actually did not get kid gloves, but there was a lot of Jefferson talk, which was not a surprise. However, during the Q&A, the audience had a lot of questions about Hamilton. And what I liked about that was they wanted both sides. So in other words, not like, yay, both sides is good, but because they actually had questions. They wanted to understand the fight. They wanted to understand why. They asked in a lot of different ways. What was it that was bothering them? Why were they going at each other? And to me, that is the moment that we're in. Right? We don't just take the story. We actually want to understand the who's and the dynamics and the what's of the story. And that audience was right in that place.
But do you mean the fight that led between them that led to the duel, or the fight between
Jefferson and Hamilton? So no duel. Well, actually, someone did ask about the duel.
So the fight between the two policies about the nation. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, they wanted to know, like, what was Hamilton thinking, and why, what was the issue with Jefferson. And so they wanted to understand the dynamics of what was actually happening. And that is the moment that we're in. We need that now. So that struck me as being good. The other thing, which is not meant to be self-promoting, but it cheered me tremendously, is that a community, a bunch of people from my Friday morning podcast came in person. They drove from all over the place in Virginia to come, and that's nice, and it made me feel good. But the important part about that is these are people who are in a community that was created online and showed up to be in that community.
Isn't that cool? But then you're also sort of like, wait, you're three-dimensional.
I know. That was totally, I was like, wait, you're real.
Yeah.
Real people.
It's lovely, but it's always like, wow. I'm always kind of like looking around like, wow, that's the third dimension there.
I know, but the fact that they bothered to do that because it is a community, I talk about this probably more than I should, but the fact of the matter is that the groups of us who routinely gather online, and whether it's your people on your events or my people on my events, or the people who are here now on Saturday mornings, that counts as community, because it's a group of people coming together with questions and concerns who want to understand what's going on and actually care about the fact that there are other people there, that it becomes a source of bonding and grounding, and that's community.
Well, so this is actually not, I think, what we want to talk about, but I thought that was fascinating yesterday in Minneapolis, but also all around the country, that people came out in such extraordinary numbers, and it was literally like 20 degrees below zero. And that was a case of, originally, I think, sort of online communities that had been formed around George Floyd in 2020, and then got reactivated because of the occupation of Minneapolis, which I can't believe I'm saying, and organized over phones and then organized over the internet. And I may not be getting these orders right. I mean, the order in which it happened, but then they turned out and they were in real numbers. And this has been one of the things that always, it just kind of got me about the way that political pundits and people in the media were talking about resistance to the Trump administration, is they kept saying there's nobody out there, nobody's organizing, nobody cares, everybody's gone home. And I would be sitting here on this side of, the camera with, tens of thousands of people organizing, but they were organizing in groups that were not visible yet in the streets. And I can't tell you how many journalists to whom I've said, you're missing the story. Yes. You need to get into these online rooms. And because
it's local. It's local and it's people. Yeah. It's a local, people grounded story. And that's not what the press normally does. They look for big, they look for top down, they look for national. And the idea being that if you can't really see it easily, then it doesn't really matter.
But that's so interesting because, of course, you did your early work on how people organized for the revolution. For me, it was the 1850s. And when the Republican, before it is the Republican Party, when they stand up against the takeover of the country by the Democrats, led by the elite Southern enslavers, they organize in these teeny tiny little places. I mean, there are handfuls of them. And we literally, Bill Gannap, when he wrote his big book, I was working later and I went to some of the same archives, and you could see, he would have signed in and there would be these lists of how many people turned out to vote. And literally they would count the 17 people. But the trick was there were 17 people in thousands and thousands of places. And when they found the language and the occasion and turned up, they elected Abraham Lincoln.
Right. Well, and that's how big things happen, right? Because that's indeed, if you go back to the revolution, it's a little here and a little there and a little here and a little there. And it wasn't until the newspapers that actually were still pushing to go through because it was vital for people in different places to understand what was happening in other places. It wasn't until there began to be a deliberate effort to show people in Pennsylvania what was happening in Massachusetts, in Virginia, what was happening in New York. It wasn't until people could see, thanks to newspapers, that there was stuff happening everywhere, but they just couldn't see it without a deliberate effort to make it be seen. Then suddenly people understood, oh, this is a movement, right? That's the moral of the story.
Well, and that always makes me think of the Reconstruction years. There was enormous anger and pushback against the elite white Southerners taking back over the political system in the South, but they didn't have a means of communication, not least because the journalists in the South after the war were all former Confederates. I mean, that's really, we know that now. And so they weren't publishing, everything they were publishing about pushback made the Black Americans the villains, even if they were the ones dying in the hundreds, quite literally, at a place like Colfax. They portrayed it as, a riot on the part of the Black guys, and the white people are the victims. And that's what people saw. There's this really interesting set of interviews from 1879 in which the interviewers talked to a whole bunch of people across the South from everything, KKK members, but really focusing on Black Americans. And they say, why aren't you speaking up? And they say, because we could get killed. And what's fascinating about that is that they would say, who have you seen being lynched? And of all the, several hundred people they interviewed, only 2 people had actually witnessed a lynching. But they had all heard about it. And I thought, that's terrorism. If you don't have the language or the means to push back against that and say, now, wait just a minute here, all you have to operate on is the terrorist side. And I think we're seeing the administration trying to do that.
They are. That's where we get to Minneapolis.
Yeah. But now we have the means to say, now, just a minute here.
Well, right. They are providing us with a model we are learning the language. That gets us back to, I never thought I would be like, yay, technology. But that gets us back to where we are right now, right? Because some of what we're doing here in talking about this and having people here commenting as well on what they're thinking is we are creating a knowledge, but more important than that, we're creating the language and the awareness of what has to be here, not you and me separately, but all of us here, all together. We're creating what needs to be in place, that system of communication and that awareness of what has to happen. It has to be there. There has to be, I don't want to say a narrative, a language. I like language. There has to be a way in which we can speak and share a common bond as to what's going on out there and what we feel about it. And that brings us back to onlineness and the fact that these communities aren't just, communities that matter, which, because we're all here together, which matters profoundly, but also because this right now is resistance. Right now, this is resistance because we are coming together and figuring out the language and the meaning and the rhetoric and the visceral understanding of what's going on. And we're doing that together, and it has to be together or it's not going to count.
So let me tell you what's really on my mind right now.
Okay.
And that is bothering me a lot. And that is what is happening in the United States of America is so much worse even than we know. Like I think I've said this to you before. I've said it everywhere. The fact that we don't have a window into these detention camps is
right.
I mean, the windows we have are the people who are dying. One at least has been listed as a homicide. The children, my head is exploding over that.
And then members of Congress trying to get in who are being kept out.
Yes. I mean, we don't have window. And I mean, again, it is Saturday morning. We're all exhausted. I'm not going to go to what that unhappy place looks like to me, but I think we all know.
Yeah.
But that's a problem, I think, as somebody who's trying to engage people and reclaim American democracy, is that my hair is on fire in every moment. But me screaming about it is not going to help anything. So then I sit there and I sort of choke that down and I try and explain to people. And then I get people saying, well, you don't care. You're not outraged by this. And it's a really hard line to walk. I mean, what do you do?
Well, I have the same issue, right? Where, and the choking down of the outrage is hard. What I'm finding hard, and particularly it's because I do, when I say, particularly in my A Few Thoughts for Those Who Can't Sleep Nighttime meandering.
No, that's not what it's called. It is Joanne After Dark. I mean, I don't care what you call it, but everybody
online are calling it Freeman After Dark is what they're actually Freeman After Dark. That is what they're calling it.
There's
whatever they call it. Whatever they call it.
There was an article just yesterday out in a magazine, somebody saying how great it was. And the person said she calls it something, but it's really Freeman After Dark.
Okay.
I guess now you can finish. Now that we have renamed your
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, what I say during Freeman After Dark, I feel to the bottom of my heart. And that is, I almost feel like you don't need me to say it again, except we all need to keep saying it over and over again. And that is that we together, the people, are what matter here. And that when we come together, there is strength and there is power. I say that a lot because I profoundly believe that. And I feel that in all of these online communities that we're creating. However, along the lines of what you just said, I worry that in emphasizing that feeling, which is profoundly important right now, that I'm erasing or I don't know, undermining, avoiding the actual danger that we're in and the hair on fire component that somehow or other, I worry that people are going to hear my message and then not think about the fact that because of the moment that we're in, that's why the community matters so much, because we have to come together and then we have to stand up. So I worry too about the balance of what I'm saying. I worry about that all the time. Am I hitting the right tone? Am I giving the right mix of, again, what I firmly believe, we're here and we're in this together and that matters, but we can't just be calm and happy in that. that has to be our grounding point. That has to be our starting point. I don't have the answer to that. I just know that I fret all the time that maybe my message isn't perfectly balanced for this moment, and I want it to be. It's at its heart, I think it's what you're saying too, is that we want people to understand the moment in its entirety. And what that means is, on the one hand, community matters, people matter, effort matters, bottom up matters, local matters. That's where the power is. On the other hand, what's happening now is beyond unacceptable. It's off the charts. And we can't keep saying that. You won't hear it anymore if we keep saying that. And yet it's true.
You want people calm enough to stand up and fight, but not so calm they don't think there is a fight. Right. And that's especially not even, I'm sorry, maybe I'm going to rant, but it's not even just the children and everything else around it. But until incredibly recently, U.S. policy was to keep families together and to admit undocumented immigrants in order to protect the children who were U.S. citizens. That is, U.S. citizens were, there was a presumption that they wanted them to have their parents with them, even if their parents were undocumented. And I did a deep dive yesterday on some of the literature that these far right expletives are reading. And it is, I think they really think we're at war, like white people are at war for something called Western civilization against the people that they hate. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, A, this is bonkers. You're welcome. Or thank you, by the way, Joanne, for that word. And B, this is just a recipe for incredible disaster. And yet the people in charge of our government are doing it. And you think that tears up everything that America has always stood for and that has made America great. And somehow, I don't know, I'll stop ranting, but
it's also, it's a rhetorical, a technique of rhetoric that is not new. And that is to dehumanize your opponents. So on the one hand, it's saying we are fighting for Western civilization, whatever that means. We, the white people, are fighting for Western civilization. On the other hand, it's saying those people who aren't with us, not only do they not count, they're not human. They're beneath us. They're animals, they're bugs, they're whatever. And many people, I'm sure, are listening to us and they're thinking Nazi Germany, because that's very much what the Nazis did to all of the people who they rounded up and threw into concentration camps. That's powerful because if you buy into that, it gets you off of the hook of conscience, because then you don't believe that you're attacking people, because then you don't believe that all of the what's going on right now, the utter inhumanity of it, the I don't want to even say corruption, the immorality, the brutality, the unacceptability of it. You don't have to really focus on that, because what you're doing is saving the good guy, white guys, from the evil, not quite human other guys. And if you truly believe that that is what the fight is, makes it a lot easier for you and explains some of the not only horrible action, but even the what comes out of the mouth of these ICE people, right? I'm coming back for your family, right? Just so you know, I'm coming back for your whatever it is that they're saying. So it's important to them to create that narrative, and that's why all the right-wing folks are going to say it over and over and over and over and over again. That narrative is how they do what they do. And people have to buy into it to have the fuel to do it, because even people who are hateful, they're still people. And on some level, they're not going to be able to do this if they don't believe that message, which is why it becomes all the more important for people to speak out against that message. Because ultimately, it's warped, it's weak, and they know on some level that that's not the case. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you don't have to go to just to Nazi Germany. This is 100% the language of the wars against Indigenous Americans, and 100% the language against, I mean, I could go through a whole list of people
Well,
in the United States of America, but certainly Black Americans. This
yeah.
was, but the key to, I think, the psychology of that was uncovered in 1951 by Eric Hoffer in his book True Believers, where he says the real kicker to this is that once you have bought into that and begun to act on it, that is, you have begun to treat your neighbors as subhuman in whichever way you're doing that, as a, somebody attacking, and, literally not just shooting Indigenous Americans. But one of the things that really jumped out to me in the book on Wounded Knee was literally when the government insisted that the Lakota come to the agency during the troubles before the Wounded Knee massacre. They left their homes, and white settlers went in and stole everything. So that, their sewing machines, their blankets, everything else. So then they go back in January and they got nothing. And, that's the sort of story that never, they wouldn't do that to their white neighbors, probably. Anyway, the problem is once you have bought into that, you can't back out, because you are psychologically committed to believing that those are the bad guys. And the more that's the case, the more you have to justify your treatment of them. So you can't be like, oh, I hurt this 5-year-old, I'm never going to do that again. You have to say, he so deserved it, I got to hurt the 2-year-old too.
Well, exactly. It has to be more and more, because this is important, though, because on a certain level, you know what you're doing. You know it's wrong. And to avoid that, and to remain in a position where you feel that you're doing something good for humanity, you have to be stronger and stronger and more to keep yourself buying that narrative, because at its heart, some part of you knows it's a false narrative. So to really keep believing it, it has to get louder and stronger, which again, you and I have talked before about the degree of brutality and of what we're seeing right now. Is in part a product of a sort of desperation, because they realize if they were super strong, they wouldn't have to do what they're doing. So some of what we're seeing is born of weakness, even though that's, I realize, counterintuitive and hard to believe. But that's an example of what we're talking about here, which is it becomes more important to be more brutal, to make themselves and everyone else believe even more what is really not true. It's on a totally different level. But again, you go back in time to the revolution, and you'll see that every once in a while, when the British would back down, they would be like, okay, well, they would never say that was a little unfair. They'll say, well, for now, perhaps we won't do this anymore, but we'll also pass an act that says we have the power and the right to do that whenever we want to. So we're not backing down. We have just the same amount of power. We're just choosing in this moment to be merciful because of how powerful we are. So they're backing down because the colonists succeeded in their protest. But the framing of it and the way it's made to look ends up mattering, particularly to, as a performance to those watching.
So I worry about that, because you can see the degree to which the administration is losing the momentum. I mean, Trump this week was a complete expletive disaster for American foreign policy. And it's not getting better. As of this morning, January 24th, Trump is now saying he's going to put 100% tariffs on Canada. I mean, the man is a freaking loose cannon. You can see that they're losing momentum also in the fact that J.D. Vance backed down on some of his more extreme statements. And what worries me, and there's actually one other thing I want to talk about today. But this is there, is I'm very concerned that people will go, oh, okay, they're not taking U.S. citizens, so that's okay now. That they'll back off just enough that people will say, oh, this is good enough. And I think about, again, the 1850s, when originally in the 30s and 40s, 30s and 40s, abolitionists really just wanted to stop the sale of children away from their mothers, and they wanted to stop the slave auctions in Washington, D.C. Their demands were actually pretty small. And that's when the elite enslavers dug their heels in and said, no, we got to be able to do all this stuff. And you think about that moment and you think, what if they had said, okay, we'll stop selling people in DC, we'll move it to, further in the South, and we will stop separating women and children. I wonder if a number of even abolitionists would have been like, okay, that's good enough. That's what worries me. This is not okay on any freaking level, and we got to erase it all, not just adjust it downward slightly.
No, that's true. That's absolutely true. But part of what the abolitionists did in that moment, particularly in Congress, part of what they did was deliberately do things to expose the brutality and the unacceptability of the Southerners. So they would actually say, okay, I, abolitionist, I'm going to go in tomorrow and say X, Y, and Z on the floor of the House. And they're going to go insane. So come on in, folks. Watch what's going to happen. I'm not going to say anything unacceptable. I'm just going to stand up and speak the truth. Come and watch what happens. And of course, the Southerners always took the bait, and they ran with weapons, and they became, crazy people, although not, but they looked like crazy people. And so the abolitionists in that moment used that moment. But what did I say? You're laughing.
Just laughing so. It's just fun to talk history with you because it's so real to us.
Yes.
I have another historian friend to talk about this stuff, and it's like you're talking about it like you're there,
right?
Like they were acting like crazy people, and you read the monographs, and it's like, well, John Quincy Adams stood up and banged the table, Anyway,
he spoke firmly. He had concerns,
right.
But at any rate, they created a moment where suddenly it was the people using all of that language about how we have to have control and it exposed that for the lie and the narrative that it was, that people had ways of exposing what was going on, and they did it deliberately, and they did it loudly, and they did it in front of a big public. I agree with what you're saying. I a couple of days ago was speaking as a political historian, a day or two ago, I think maybe in my evening meandering, and said, we're in a post-party politics moment, which is really important to realize, because we assume that our political system is governed by that, is grounded on that there are two parties. And even if now we say it's, MAGA versus Democrats, we still think that, and we're not there anymore. And that's really important because we're not on normal political ground. Neither party is acting in a party-like manner. They're not doing the traditional work that parties do. So we are sort of off the grid when it comes to normal politics. And the reason why that's important to understand is because just what you were saying, we can't say, oh, well, we'll take a step back and then we'll sort of adjust things to a normal point. We're not there. We're not there. And what that means, on the one hand, I will readily acknowledge that's scary. Right? It is. We're all in a position where we're angry and we're scared. On the other hand, it's a moment where you can think big and move to something better. It's a moment where you can actually think about where you want things to be, where you want to push to get them to. And we're not going to achieve that tomorrow, but we have to think about it now. As we're resisting, we have to be resisting towards something. As we're resisting, we have to be thinking about what kind of nation we want to be. And I think all of us here have in our gut a sense of what that is, of what kind of nation we want that to be. And that's important, that we're moving towards something as we're resisting against something. That's part of the same story.
So I'm 100% there, and we have seen this in the past repeatedly, like the 1860s, the progressive era, the New Deal era, and so on. But again, I worry that all it will take for a lot of people is to say, okay, we got rid of the worst excesses of ICE. We'll be okay from now on. And, because that's essentially obviously this is a hugely broad statement, but that's essentially what happened during Reconstruction. Like, okay, we're all exhausted after this war and this huge fight for a generation. We'll just shake hands and everything will be over. And what do we get? We get the Jim Crow South, we get lynching, we get all that. And similarly, after the Civil Rights Act of 1965, okay, we're a just society now. And that left room for these radical right ideologues to take back over the system. And one of the things that really jumps out to me right now that I don't think we're talking enough about is the fact that the for-profit prison system that is running these ICE deportation flights and is running these detention camps, what I would call concentration camps, which is a different thing than a death camp, but I would definitely call them concentration camps. That's huge money. That's billions and billions of dollars. And there's an awful lot of people who will have jobs in that system, who have, especially when they're putting them in underserved areas, who have a real stake in maintaining this system because it's a paycheck, and that in turn wraps them into this idea of, well, these are subhuman people anyway. And that's a lot of people, and it's a lot of money. And right now our government is switching from using our tax dollars to help us have health care and to eat and to have housing and decent roads and schools and hospitals and all that, and taking our tax dollars instead to build this extraordinarily repressive, what I would call a fascist system. And I'm with you on everything about the movement and about people pushing back and about people wanting better and all that. I am very concerned that it will become too easy on the other side to say, Trump's dead because he's decomposing in front of our eyes. That's good enough. And
Right.
then we will still have that system in place.
But those things are connected to me, because it will be or could be easy to feel a great sense of relief that certain things have ended and to go, we're all exhausted. Okay, the worst is over. Right?
I'm laughing. I said, when Trump's dead because he's decomposing in front of our eyes, and you're like, when people are comfortable because certain things have ended, I'm like, there is the difference between the two of us.
You always, when we had our podcast,
you're like, he might walk off stage. Okay.
When we had our podcast, you were always like so diplomatic. I went right into the diplomatic zone.
Right.
I always went, and I don't know why, but now I sort of lost where I was going anyway. But
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
That's okay.
Because you said you were with me on all that stuff, but this was the butt place. People might be happy because certain things had ended, but
butt place, right? So now you really got me distracted, because now I'm just going to think about the butt place. So sorry, but no. So, but it's why it's going to be an obvious thing to say. It's why, to speak really broadly, history is important. It's why it's important that we don't just say, "I feel so much better, it's over," but we say and acknowledge what just happened and what's happening now. Not, okay, it's totally logical to say, I feel better now because Trump's decomposing and the regime is not in power anymore. I feel so much better. Yay. Now everything can go back to normal. But we can't be allowed to forget. We can't let even the well-meaning folks who just want to move on, we can't let folks erase what we're living and experiencing now. And I think all of us on a visceral level understand the meaning of this moment in that way. All of us, where we started out, all of us have a feeling in our gut about children being attacked. All of us have feelings about whatever the hell is going on behind those closed doors in these detention centers. All of us know the horrors of this in our gut. And as much as we want things to feel better and feel normal, don't forget that reality. Your body is telling you exactly what this moment means. That gut feeling, that's a reminder of the reality of this moment. Even if we are lucky enough to not be living those horrors, we are in them. And so whatever happens next, I guess, remember history, but also remember this moment, what it feels like, what you're seeing. As goofy as it sounds, I always tell the people in my History Matters podcast, write stuff down, write what it feels like, write how scared you are, write how horrible it is. And I realize hey, I'm not saying like revel in the bad, but make reminders to yourself and ultimately for historians of the future, write down what this moment is for you, because we're going to want to not think about it. And we have to own it to get past it.
Do you know, I had not thought about I have thought about Trump's attempts to erase American history and create his own history as being about his aggrandizement, that this was an attempt really to say that the America had always been the way he wanted it to be. But I hadn't thought about the degree to which erasing the past in this present is a way for Americans to forget the history that leads to an authoritarian government.
Right. Who we've been.
The patterns, erasing the patterns. Yes.
Right, exactly, patterns. There are wonderful things that we have done in the past that represent opportunity and ideas. And there are things that we have done that have been horrific and unfair and unjust. And you can't erase the latter and get to keep the former as much as you might want to try.
And on that note, we have gone on
long.
Yeah, I wish we could talk about history. I mean, what we do for history, but that idea of what history means and why he is erasing it, I think is there's so many layers to that.
Yes, we can do that another time because some of my guys in the early 19th century were trying to write the history that hadn't been written yet for similar reasons.
And that's a theme too, a really interesting theme too. I hadn't thought about that. W.B. Du Bois does that so well. All right, so I am seeing in the comments that something big has happened, and
I had my comments.
And let's not go into it because with luck, these conversations will be sort of general, and people can watch them without reference to specific news, which you can get on both of our other podcasts. This is sort of intended more to put together history and politics in a general way, and I hope that's been somewhat useful. And what I'm seeing does not look good.
No, but I do want to repeat what Marilyn Hemingway just said because that's important. African Americans have never had the luxury of forgetting history. I want to be sure that thought is here as we wrap things up. And you and I have talked before about maybe not necessarily always waiting till Saturday. And I don't know if we're going to want to talk during the week, but I throw that out there again.
Talk during the week.
Well, I obviously am the crazy person who's now like, hey, it's nighttime. I think I'll come on the screen again. But
you mean rather like writing a letter every night?
Yeah. I guess that is my letter. But at any rate, maybe depending on what's happening, we will appear with more to say since now I'm on leave. So I'm home so we can talk more.
Well, I'm on the road this week, but you know how that is. It's always hit or miss. And I'm actually not doing very much on the road. I just have to be in places because of when things are happening. So I may very well have the time to do that.
I also need to say something important now. Last week.
Oh, yeah.
Many of you reminded us.
We did, though.
We did. So what happened last week was we ended, and then Heather was like, oh, my God, we didn't say I love you. And I was like, are people going to notice? She's like, oh, my God, Joanne, which they did. And we almost came back on and said, I love you, and then went back and decided we would not do it.
But in fairness, we realized it because we were saying goodbye afterward, and I said, love you, Joanne. And I was like, oh, crap. But
exactly.
But so here we go. I'm so glad to be doing this with you, Joanne. I could not be doing this without you. And I love you. Hope you have a great week.
I love you too. I am this moment and all that it is, I'm getting through it in a big way, in part because of you, Heather. I love you too. I love yous.
So you made up for last week. Have a good week, everybody. And keep the faith.
Take care of yourself.
That's right. Thanks for being here.
Bye, everybody.